So let me do a brief introduction of the people that we have here today. I'm gonna start in the order that you see us here in the screen. We are gonna start with here we have Andy Davidson. Andy Davidson is the CEO of Nova, and he's gonna give us an introduction in a few minutes. We have here Paul Morrissey. Paul Morrissey is the chairman of Nova. Paul and Andy have been working in Nova for the last 10 years. And as many of you will probably know, that Nova has funded around 80 startups in the last 10 years. Then here we have Luke Thomas. Luke Thomas is managing the pipeline and the application process, and is coaching a lot of startups as well. Here we have Joe. Joe is working in managing the pipeline as well, together with Luke. And we have Alistair as well. Alistair is the Chief Marketing Officer of Alistair Martsen, the Chief Marketing Officer of Nova, and he's handling marketing both for fundraising exercises as well as for founders. Okay, well, very good. So now we are 56 people, and I think we are going to start. So this today is we're going to do an introduction to Nova. It's going to be a Q&A. If you want to ask any question, there is a Q&A section that you see here where it says Q&A. You can actually ask your questions there. You can vote for the questions that other people have, and we will stay here until we answer all the questions. Please do not ask the questions in the chat. I think it's clearer and better if you ask the questions in the Q&A section. But if you want to say something in the chat, if you want to send a message to us or say hi to the other people, the other panelists or the other participants, that is totally fine. But for the questions, it's better you ask the questions in the Q&A section. Okay, perfect. So maybe we can start with Andy. Andy, as I said, is the CEO of Nova, and he's going to do the opening for this webinar. Hi, Andy. So thank you very much for joining us. And we are very interested in listening to what you have to say.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you for starting the webinar off and introducing us all. As Pedro said, I'm Andy Davidson. I'm the Chief Exec and founder of Nova. I'm going to give a brief introduction today and broadly answer kind of a few questions that might be in people's minds. So the first one is, why Nova? Why does Nova exist, and what does Nova do? The second one is, why Asia? We're obviously a UK headquartered business, and why are we focused in Asia? And then the third one is, why would you want to work with Nova? If you're at the beginning of your kind of startup or entrepreneurial journey, why would you want to work with us? But I'll start off by, again, welcoming you all. As Pedro says, this is our second cohort in Asia. I think our first cohort had over 300 applicants, and I think we've already agreed to fund several of those companies. So I'm hoping that this cohort is just as successful as the last one. So I'll start with why Nova, really, and I think it's interesting to frame what Nova is and what Nova isn't. So we often get people asking us whether we are an incubator or an accelerator program, or whether we're a venture capital firm, or are we a technology company, are we a corporate venturing partner? And the answer is that we're none of the above and a little bit of all of the above. So Nova, we're a venture builder, and venture building is a form of applied venture capital. And applied venture capital is kind of it's almost a nascent or early strategy in founding tech startups, and it's starting to gather traction globally, and there's starting to be quite a lot of evidence of how successful it can be very early in a startup's life cycle, and we've got quite a lot of evidence of how venture building can be successful. So our particular venture building approach is called a co-foundry. Now, the reason applied venture capital is applied is that there's less of an emphasis on capitalizing companies so that they can go and procure resources to achieve their objectives. It's more about providing the company directly with the resources. Now, obviously, there are cash transactions and share capital is issued. But really the emphasis is on ensuring that the right team are in place in the early stages of the startup's life in order for it to hit its objectives and be successful. And as I say, a number of people have different approaches to this, and ours is a co-foundry approach. And the reason for that is that we source founders, so individuals, appropriate individuals that we want to co-found a business with. And that's probably what it's not probably at all, that's what the next phase of this series of webinars is about. It's a conduit into our venture readiness program. And that is all about us identifying founders that we believe have the right characteristics and domain knowledge for us to co-found a business with, and also for us to establish whether it's worth founding a business. You know, does the founder want to address an opportunity or solve a problem that's worth solving? And that generally comes down to you know, evidence of market size and users who are engaged in solving that problem. So our approach is all around co-founding startups with individuals. So it's less emphasis on investment and more around co-founding a business and putting the right people in place around the founder to make that business successful. So, you know, okay, so that sounds interesting, or maybe it doesn't sound interesting. It depends on how your own view is of how a business should be founded and what your own personal journey needs to look like. But if you are interested, you probably want to know whether it works or not. And we've been iterating this co-foundry model now for over 10 years. We've co-founded, I think it's around about 100 companies now over that 10-year period. And that's kind of time period and that number, that kind of quantum of companies founded, allows us to have collated some very interesting data. And what we know to start off with is a co-founded company is 5 times as likely to survive beyond the early years than a company that's founded in any other manner. And that's interesting because it means that a lot of the common early reasons for companies failing are known to us and our process eradicates. Now, because we are successful at preventing failure, that in turn actually means we've gone on to be very successful. And we've built at least 140 million pounds sterling of shareholder value. Now, if you consider that all of the companies that we co-found didn't exist before we co-founded them, that's a lot of kind of 0 to 1 events, and it's a lot of value built from nothing. So we've got a very well-established team, we've got a very well-established process, we've got 10 years worth of data, and we can evidence that if you're the right type of founder to work with us, then we definitely have the right approach to maximize the chance of success. So I guess the second thing then is why Asia? And that's a lot about our business and our ambitions, really. We've been operating predominantly within the UK for 10 years. We have backed some founders that are outside of the UK, and we continue to attract them, and it will continue to do so. But our business has a number of value inflection points ahead of it. So when we started out, we primarily operated in the north, and particularly the northwest of the UK. And several years ago, we chose to demonstrate that our model would work throughout the UK, and we successfully did that. And it's important for us now to demonstrate that our model works outside of the UK, and we can put it to work in different territories. So we looked long and hard at the different places that we could attempt to run a co-foundry cohort in next. And for various reasons, both economic and cultural and market readiness, we decided that Asia was the next best place for us to attempt to scale our business. And as I said earlier, this is our second cohort. We were very pleased with the experience that we had in terms of attracting appropriate founders in our first cohort and finding people and businesses that we could back. So we think that, for various reasons, Asia's where it's at, and it's going to become very important for our business to demonstrate that we can co-found companies here. And that should be good news for you guys, because you'll have our full attention. And I think that leads me lastly on to why you may want to work with Nova. And in a sense, it's a reiteration of some of the first points that I made around the data and our methodology. If you are the right type of individual, and you are focused on solving a problem, and you are collaborative, and you're open to our co-founding approach, then we've got 10 years worth of track record over 100 different businesses that we've successfully leveraged across our portfolio of companies that we will leverage within your business. So that's quite significant value, really. In almost all scenarios, we've been there, done that, and have the t-shirt. And due to the nature of our approach, we are co-founders of your business. Our team are very much embedded in the business that we co-found. So you will glean an awful lot of value from our collective experience that must run into, hundreds, if not 1,000 years throughout our team. So I think if you go through our process and you get selected, it means that we've worked out that you are a good fit for us and we are a good fit for you. And at that point, then we've got every chance of your business being one of the ones that is 5 times more likely to be successful than businesses founded in any other way. So I hope there I've given you a brief overview of what Nova is. We're a venture builder. I hope I've explained how we can evidence that we are actually good at building ventures. I've explained a little bit about why Nova operating in Asia is so important to our business. And I think I've explained how you will benefit from co-founding a business with us rather than going down a traditional angel round or seed capital round route. So I think that's all from me. I'm going to sign off and leave you in the capable hands of the rest of the team. So the last thing I need to do is wish you good luck. So good luck. Bye for now.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Very good.
Andy.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's continue. I see that some of you have already started asking questions, and we are going to go through all of them. But before that, we want to explain a few other things about Nova, about how it works. And one question that I have, and I think that will be interesting for a lot of people, will be a question for Paul Morrissey, right? So, Paul, can you give me some examples of successful startups that have been created through this process? Some startups that maybe have exited or partially exited. Can you give me some examples?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Paul Morrissey here. Yeah, that's a good question, Pedro, because you're getting right to the heart of why people would want to engage with us. First of all, one of the questions that I wanted to ask was what type of founder that we're looking for, because I think that has a significant influence on which companies are successful and why they're successful. So the type of founders we're looking for are people who are passionate about a problem, and it's all about a problem. In fact, in the early days of Nova, I think Luke's the only one that's still here. I had some T-shirts printed where it said, "It's all about the problem, stupid." So we put ourselves in that arena. So founders are not necessarily entrepreneurs. They are people who want to solve a problem. Some of them will be very entrepreneurial. Some of them will be very logical about why they want to solve the problem. The problem does not have to be something which is going to turn into the next Tesla or the next AWS. It needs to be a problem that people can associate with, and other people agree with them that that's worth solving. That's how we validate the market. So the founder or the entrepreneur is really a person who is open and very, very passionate about solving a problem. And that's where most of this comes from. So we start with the problem. So let me give you some examples of companies that have come to us with problems and gone through our process and have exited our process. And in fact, the vast majority of our family, and we really do believe these are a part of a family, we don't exit completely. Our value is in keeping them within the family and growing with them, and in the first instance for them. So some problems that have been thrown at us, I'll give you a classic example. Probably the first one that Andy and I looked at, well, it was certainly one of the first 10 that we looked at, because we always looked at doing these in a portfolio approach. And that was a company called Centric Music. So Centric Music, they identified a problem that the actual founder had the problem himself. And he came to us with a real frustration about this problem that he wanted to solve, but he wanted to solve it for selfish reasons, for himself. So we listened, and this problem was really about how, as an independent, this is 10 years ago, remember, so as an independent musician, not signed by any label, I just play in the bar, which is, the bar of the Hilton Hotel or a pub in Liverpool or somewhere in Newcastle. And, I play each night or 3 or 4 nights a week. And he realized that part of the money that the bar was paying to him went to a society in the UK called the PRS, Performing Rights Society. So that meant that every time he performed, there was a small amount of his fee which was taken out at source and paid to a society in the UK. The society was the non-for-profit, and the idea was he was building up a small nest egg, a pension, if you like. But he was a bit frustrated, and he didn't know, A, how much he'd ever paid in, and B, how the hell he ever got it out. So it was a really selfish problem that he had. And when Andy and I looked at it, we thought, well, this isn't a problem which is only associated with you. It's a problem that's associated with every individual musician that hasn't got a contract or is not signed up by a label. So we went through our validation stage. How many people would this apply to? Does everybody have to subscribe to this society? And we spent about a year validating the fact that this problem was worth solving for a majority of people, not just for the founder. 10 years later, that company is now valued in the tens, if not hundreds of millions, and they have something like over 200,000 independent artists on their platform, both in the UK, in Europe, and to be very soon in the USA. So we've helped grow that company. We've built the tech. We looked at the market. We did the marketing for them. And then eventually that company became, in its own right, something that could move off. I associate it. We come from Liverpool here. And in Liverpool, we're very famous for the Beatles and building ships. I mean, we have a massive shipyard on the other side of the river here. And I associate it that Nova are the people that help you build the ship, but we don't sail it and we don't take it to America. We let it go. And that's what we've done with a lot of our companies. So our exit is usually, we still own a little piece of the ship, but the ship is manufactured by us, but is run by the company and the entrepreneur or the founder. And that's an example of something which has grown tremendously over the last 10 years. We still own a small part of it, but it is something which we're very passionate about. So that was in music tech, if you like, or content tech. We've had other examples within things like med tech, which I'm sure Alistair will be able to talk to you about. He's very close with med tech, legal tech, and lots of other technology. So if you put anything after tech, fintech, health tech, whatever, that tech piece is what we try to attract. So the problem that we're looking for, the founders and the problems we're looking for are problems that actually can be solved with tech, because that's what we do for a living. So Centric is a great example. There are a few others, but I don't want to take the whole seminar up explaining it. But that's probably the best example of somebody coming to you with a problem that they have. When we went out and asked them to validate it with other people, there was a great validation. Then we didn't build anything until we had that validation. Then we moved forward with the build. Then we moved forward with, Luke will take you through the stages of our growth plan. But as Andy said, if we hadn't been able to validate that problem, we would have failed early. So we've industrialized failure. If you don't meet the criteria for success, you fail. And failure very often is not, we're never going to talk to you again. Failure is more usually, go off and do some more validation and come back to us when you've done it. Or if you don't think this idea can be validated, go and find another problem to examine, because you are the right sort of person if you're prepared to examine problems and actually drive them forward to a solution after validation. So I'll leave it at that. If that's okay, Pedro, is that answer enough?
Paul, yep, absolutely. That point about how to manage failure and how to do validation is very, very interesting and very important. And this is the core of the Lean Startup methodology, right?
Yes.
So I wanted to discuss a little bit about the Lean Startup methodology with you and the other guests. But before I go into that, I'm going to answer a question here in the Q&A section. Do you have to be in Asia to participate in NOVA? No, this webinar is focused on Asia because we are starting working in Asia. This is the second cohort for Asia. And this webinar is focused on Asia. But NOVA is mainly working in the UK. There have been startups in Europe as well. It's just that this particular webinar is for Asia. I think some people, maybe a few people that are in the webinar might not be from Asia. That's not a problem because the theme applies. The same applies. The methodology is the same, and the way it works is exactly the same in Asia or in the UK or wherever.
Okay? And you can make that application through this this methodology, I presume, Luke. It's not make any difference.
Yep.
Just make
Very
your
good.
application agnostically of geography.
Yeah, actually, it's agnostic of geography. Very good. Let's talk a little bit about Lean Startup methodology, Paul. So you were talking about validation, you were talking about managing failure, etc., etc. Can you tell me what is a Lean Startup? What is the Lean Startup methodology that NOVA and many successful entrepreneurs are utilizing in order to create startups?
Okay, so that's a great question. And, in my true form, as a soccer player, I usually find the space and move into it. So I'm going to pass this ball to either Luke or Alistair.
Yeah, Luke or Alistair.
So Alistair, can you explain the Lean Startup methodology?
Yeah, I can. I think like Luke is probably much a better place for this question than I am.
Come on, Luke, get off mute.
Yeah, so a lean startup is a startup that reduces waste. Waste being anything that's basically expensive to do that turns out to be the wrong series of choices. And for any early startup, you are absolutely limited by resources. And it's very important to make sure that you use those resources as effectively as possible. Many people confuse lean with cheap or poor quality, and that's not at all what it means. It means that when you commit a large amount of resource, i.e. I want to build an app or I want to make this feature that hasn't been done before to my users, I'm very confident that I'll get a positive response from doing so. So the essence of a lean startup is to not buy loads of stock, put it in your house, and then go find customers. It's to make sure that you've got customers ready, that you've validated to the best of your ability what they need and what their problems are, and then commit the resource in a way that is high quality, that is as low cost as possible, because you are minimizing waste. You're not going to throw it away. There is no greater waste than something done really well that was never needed at all. So that's the entire philosophy at NOVA. What can we prove before we build so that your resource and your startup can go further and further and further?
Okay. And obviously there are some good books around this. Ash Moyer's got a tremendous book that we almost follow verbatim. He's one of our mentors. So if you want to do some reading around that, please do.
Yeah,
and
the
the other
good
one
news
is Eric Ries.
The Lean Stack program that you've all been invited to is Ash Moira's latest version of all of that work, and it really, it is the philosophy we work towards, and hopefully you'll gain a lot of valuable insight just from going through that. If you're to work with us, then we'll be following that methodology exactly. So it's not something to complete in order to get investment. It's something to really take in and apply today to your customers. It's stuff that everyone can do from the beginning, and then we'll carry that work through into product build, into marketing, and into all the other activities that your company might need to do.
Okay, very interesting. And when Andy was talking about, in his introduction, about how Nova applies this lean startup methodology, he was referring to how to reduce. He was saying, you can build a startup this way, and you are going to have a probability of success that can be 5 times the average probability of success in the UK and also across the world. Because typically the probability of success of a startup across statistics I think this is UK and US statistic, is 8%. So after 3 years, Nova, so the success rate after 3 years, so all the startups that have survived 3 years with Nova have been around 54%, which is around 5 to 6 times that 8%. I wonder if you guys can tell me about this. Why do startups fail? What are the key reasons why startups fail? And how is Nova playing in those 5 areas in order to minimize this risk probability?
Okay, I think we have 5 top reasons. During this 10 years, we've iterated and pivoted many times. In the first instance, we were just putting blind bets out. Just so happened that Centric was a bet we made. Our methodology of working out why these things fails has progressively got more in depth and more analytical over time. But I think there's no doubt that the biggest failure, the biggest contribution to failure, is building something nobody wants. And that, if you put that into a different word, it's founder bias. And what that means is you've found a problem, you've solved it, and you don't care what anybody else thinks. That's the best way that this problem can be solved. And though when we come across those sort of founders that won't listen, they don't have any ears for any other solution, then that doesn't work for us. So that is biggest. I can't remember the percentage, but it's over 30%. It's
36%.
36%. So that going down in order, I think the next one, and I haven't got my list in front of me, so I'm flying by my pants here. The next one is having the wrong co-founders, or co-founder conflict. And let me tell you the story of most startups. Most startups are, start with the person that's got an idea and decides they know how to solve it. Usually they don't have any tech, and they've got very little money. So they try to get a technologist, somebody who can build a website for them or build a bit of code so they can build an app. And the way that they bring that person on board is they give them some equity. So, you actually say, right, I've got 100% of equity. I'll give a little bit to this tech guy that comes on. The tech guy starts arguing with you, I need more than that. You end up, let's say, typically giving 10% of the company away to the tech guy. Tech guy then says, well, I need some more money. I need to get some AWS capability. That's going to cost me some money. Okay, then you bring somebody else on who says, I can get you some money. And you say, well, I can't afford to pay you to bring money in. And the guy says, okay, well, I'll take some equity. So before too long, you've given out quite a lot of equity in your company, and your equity is your value. And by giving that equity away, as you grow, you may find that the tech guy that you brought on is not the right tech guy. He's great at Java, but you need something in C++, or he's great at cloud, but you need something in app. So you start saying, well, hold on, I've given you 10% of the company here, and you end up arguing with people about the value that they've given to you because you make this deal in the first place. And so lots of companies fail because the co-founders, it's called co-founder conflict, they just can't work together. They get frustrated and they fall apart. You just can't do it. I can't remember how big a percentage that is, but it's definitely in there.
This is 12% of the startups.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's only 12, to be honest with you. I see that in a lot of them. The other one is actually just running out of money, running out of runway. And then you end up chasing customers for this app that you've never validated, rather than concentrating on your value proposition. So you're trying to scale too early is a big failure criteria. But so what we've done over the years is seen how the companies that we've invested in have failed. So this is very close to my heart. In fact, it's even closer to my wallet. So we've wasted money, and we don't want to waste money anymore. And that's to Luke's point. That's why we've taken this lean approach that says we only will spend money when we need to, or spend, and money equals resources as well. I mean, money is not just cash. It is actually the whole capacity of your ability to move forward. So we've adopted that lean methodology. And in fact, in some of our videos, I say we've industrialized failure. We actually know what failure is about, and we've taken it out of our process, or we try to mediate it or mitigate it. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. As you said, 92% of startups globally, tech startups, fail. Our failure rate's 54%, which is incredibly better than normal. We're not saying we've taken all risk out of it. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be we'd be doing this at Amazon scale. But we have taken the majority of risk out of it. And that there are a couple of other reasons, but those are the sort of failure metrics, if you like.
So let me just summarize a little bit, because I mean, Paul explained it very well, but I'm just gonna give you the 5 reasons according to our research, and the explanation is what Paul just has said. Number 1 is building something nobody wants. So starting with a solution without understanding the problem. Number 2 is hiring poorly. Number 3 is failing to execute marketing and sales, which basically means that you are trying to scale up before you have a product that can scale. Number 4 is not having the right co-founders. And number 5 is chasing investors and not customers because you are running out of money. Those are the 5 reasons why startups fail. Excellent, very good, wonderful. So we have understood what is a lean startup methodology. We have discussed a little bit about how to manage the entrepreneurship risk. And now I wanted to talk about the value proposition of Nova for the entrepreneur. So Nova is not an investor or a venture builder that can fit anyone. Nova is targeting a very special kind of entrepreneurs. And I'm going to discuss with Alistair about this. So the first thing, and I think Andy was talking slightly about this in the introduction, is what is the kind of entrepreneur that Nova is looking for? Alistair.
Sure. So I guess like the type of, again, probably not entrepreneur, but the type of founder that Nova is looking for is somebody which has got what we call founder market fit. So they've either identified a status quo within their sector or their industry, or their personal life, something that they can see that there's a status quo which is ready for being disrupted, or they experience a daily problem, again, within, whether it's personal life or whether it's in their day-to-day job, they're experiencing a problem which they believe should be able to be solved through tech. That individual is probably considered an expert within their field, and therefore can bring a great deal of market knowledge to the co-founding team, and kind of guide us through on that vision and the strategy and the commercial direction that startup will go on. They are probably not the type of individual that can code, although that's not necessarily going to block them from working with Nova. They're probably not the type of individual that's got the the time or network to raise capital. They're probably not the type of individual that necessarily wants to give up everything to put all their chips and take the risk on starting this startup. Now, there are individuals which fit the counter of all that, and that's typically a kind of like entrepreneurial mindset, that they want to take the risk. They can do all this stuff. If they can't do it, they'll learn it, and they will be the all singing, all dancing person, and that Hollywood kind of icon of, say, Mark Zuckerberg or somebody like that. They're not the type of individual that we want. Is that they want to really completely control and own every aspect of the company, and they'll go off and they'll succeed or they'll fail, and when they succeed they'll be greatly successful, and when they fail, which will happen more than not, it could be quite painful. What we're interested in is somebody that's looking at going down a journey, trying to de-risk it as much as possible, trying to hand over some of the responsibility to others, looking to co-found a team, aren't necessarily interested in being able to do everything, being the Swiss Army knife of an entrepreneur, and is really just giving us that market knowledge and experience, and helping, being that kind of that front end of the startup, and allowing somebody else to come in with the decisions and let market guide them and follow process. And if we can find somebody that fits that mold, that's exactly who we're looking to go after.
Okay, so and what are the kind of resources and services that Nova provides to these kind of people? Because Nova is a venture building and is a co-founder to these kind of people. How does it really work? What are the resources that Nova provides?
Yeah, I guess, well, our objective is to add value to anything that we start, and the way we do that is we provide the co-founding team, as has been discussed like a number of times already, but we'll provide the founder with a team. We'll provide the founder with process and methodology that is just systematically, and Paul's hit on this like a number of times, over 10 years, we've built up this process and methodology, and like our team of over 100 startup experts, we will deploy them into the company which will form with all our founders, to basically systematically de-risk every next step that we take.
So what are the roles in that team? So you provide a team to the startups, and that team that you provide to the startups is developers, is design, what are those roles?
Yeah, so I guess, and that's one of our differentiators, in that, we do provide capital. And Andy was talking about applied capital, applied venture capital, and this terminology you'll hear banded around, and what it usually means is somebody will support you a little bit closer than somebody just giving you cash and letting you run with it. We of the 100 people that we employ, none of them are investment, well, hardly any of them are kind of like from the investment sphere. They're all full stack developers, marketers, finance, HR, legal, any function that you would require to start and run a company. They're the employees that we have and will be a part of your founding team. Each company that we start will have a different mix of those, depending on the product, the market, the stage, etc., etc. So it's difficult for us to say you would have X amount of developers and this type of developer and somebody from finance and somebody from HR, but we've got access to all those skills and resources, and it would be a bespoke team, a bespoke co-founding team that would be applied or put into each one of the companies that we start.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, and no, you also mentioned that Nova has a process. So Nova is a guided program. Can you describe the different stages and the investment gates and how it really works process-wise?
Yeah, sure. So it's probably worth saying that there are typically two stages that we invest in. One is we do a little bit of later stage, and later stage for us is probably still pre-revenue, and that's all bespoke. But the majority of stuff that we do, and where we add the most value, and in terms of most of the people on this webinar, where we have the most interest, is at the ideation stage. And when we start a business at that point, the kind of the standard process that we go through, it's a 9-month process. So the money and resource that we provide will support you for a standardized, gated 9-month runway. And we try and hit 3 objectives over those 9 months. And the very first one is problem fit, which is once you start the online lean stack program. This is the mindset change in that we're really focusing, as Paul said, on the problem, not the solution. So the first thing we try and achieve is what we call problem fit. And we typically try and achieve that within the first month. And the purpose of that stage is literally to confirm that there is a problem we're solving. It's in a large enough market, and it's potentially a scalable solution. That there is a scalable market beyond that. And that's going to be measured by connecting with a meaningful number of users, and they're going to be given concrete evidence that that problem is real. The next stage, or the next objective, is achieving solution fit. That usually lasts kind of 2 to 3 months, and the purpose of that stage is to validate that there is a potential solution and a business model that's going to address that problem. By this stage, there may not even be anything built. And if there is, it's going to be a rudimentary product. So again, like Paul said, we're focusing on the problem and the solution before we start really kind of putting all the weight behind developing stuff. And then the third one is this product fit. And that's where we start looking at what the actual product could be. And typically that lasts for up to about 6 months. And the purpose of that stage is to develop a prototype or minimal viable product, or I think like people are now saying more minimal lovable product. That solves the user's problem enough that they're going to want to use it, need to use it repeatedly, and it's probably going to pain them if that product was taken away from them. And key to that is that product, it's not a finished product, it's just a very, very small piece of the finished product, which is solving the core of their problem or their pain. And then beyond that, we will hopefully have something successful with a little bit of traction. And then we go into bespoke kind of more kind of like typical VC type deals, but again, generally with some kind of gated objective milestone targets to hit to release kind of further investment. Okay, so in the more common kind of startups that Nova invests, which is the earlier stage one, that kind of startup. What comes after the Nova program? When you graduate, when you finish this 9-month Nova program, what happens there? Do you have to raise further capital? How does it work after the program? And how can Nova help them, continue helping them after the program? Yep. So again, beyond that point, it all gets quite bespoke. I think, like as Paul alluded to with his ship analogy, our job really is to get something which is, I'll carry on with it, seaworthy. And but at some point, that business will be at the stage where it's right to start team forming. Now that could be month 9, it could be month 19. It really depends on what's going on within the sector, how much traction they're getting, how investable that opportunity is. There are a ton of factors at which point you should start team forming. Now, what Nova will do beyond that 9-month period is if there is like signs that hang on, this is exciting, there's something interesting there, there is a bit of traction, we'll carry on providing the team as long as it makes sense. We'll be able to flex that team, pulling them back when there are periods kind of like quietness, kind of really ramping it up when you start to get traction and you've got a lot of work to do. In terms of finance, we will be following our money. That's one of the things that we've been working on over the last year, and we're going to continue to work on that. We really want to be going from pre-seed all the way up through to Series A and beyond. But we won't be providing all the investment kind of beyond the 9-month runway. It's probably safe to say we'll start to look at bringing in co-founders, co-investors, and we'll help you find that extra finance as well. I mean, the shortest way to kind of say it is that we align our business model that we only kind of see success when the business sees success. So we do everything within our power and our skill set to make sure that that business is successful. And that means supporting you in any way that we can and not holding you ransom. So again, it's really specific to each deal, and it's really specific to each company, depending on all the different forces that could ever affect a startup. But essentially, we'll provide you with resource, we'll provide you with capital, we'll provide you with support to raise more capital, and we'll provide you with the support to set up your own team when the time is right. And what is the typical investment and how much equity Nova takes from the startups for this investment? I would assume that this varies a little bit depending on the kind
on the stage of the startup. How does it typically work in terms of amount and equity?
Yeah, and like I've seen this question come up quite a few times on the QA Q&A piece. So it's easier to talk about so again, like on those two options that I said, like one coming into us with an ideation stage business, that's probably the easiest one, as that's a bit more standardized. Beyond 9 months and beyond, once there's like a tiny bit of something and there's a minimal viable product and a bit of traction, that's when it gets all bespoke, because it's much easier for us to perform more traditional kind of valuation processes and methodologies. But that initial site and that initial bit where it's an idea, there's somebody with an idea, there's probably little to nothing else. Stereotypically and kind of as an average, and as you say, that there is movement on this. But typically what we do, and I'll speak in like UK pounds at the minute, because kind of like trying to figure this out across all different currencies would be a bit of a headache. But what we do is we go into an agreement with typically like a 50-50 kind of like handshake, in that we both say, right, we'll start off with a 50-50 bit here before there's anything formed, before there's an incorporated company and actually shares are issued. And we'll value that at circa £300,000. Now, to bring the investment in, Nova will dilute down from that point. So we'll typically dilute down to bring in about circa 300K's worth of resource and investment, which would value the company at about 600,000 UK pounds. At that point, the founder's still owning 50%, Nova's just diluting down. If we're successful together at the end of that 9-month runway, like the company should have a prototype, it should have a business model that we would hope, and the whole reason we're doing this is that it's going to attract further investment that may come from Nova, it may come from anywhere else. Like I said before, we'll support you. And the valuation at that point is probably going to be in excess of 1 million, kind of 1.1 to 1.2 million, depending on what we've got and the kind of early metrics that we've got. And again, the founder's got 50% of that, and we're sat at the same position. Beyond there, you're into kind of just typical venture capital world, and it will all be based on the amount of money coming in, the amount of resource kind of there, the valuation of the company based on standard value venture capital metrics. So it's easier to explain that initial deal offering than anything beyond there.
Okay, perfect. And here, when it comes to the deal, there are two questions that typically come, and probably they are asked here in the Q&A section, but because they are very common, let me address them now. Do founders get paid a salary, and how much time they have to dedicate to the startup?
Yeah, sure. So stereotypically, again, like, let's not go at the post 9 months. If we use that as the gate, let's go kind of like,
during the 9 months.
Yeah.
During the 9 months.
Stereotypically, no, that there is no founder salary. Post 9 months runway, like, we'll assess it all together as a collective, and we'll decide as a collective, like, do you need to take salary? Is this starting to become like a full-time role? And that leads on to the second point, in like how much time. As the founder for an ideation stage business, we typically ask you to commit about 8 days a month over the first 9 months. And your objective there is going to be to lead the company from like concept to a potentially profitable and scalable business. And what Nova do is, as the co-founder or team of co-founders, it's not an individual, it's a team of co-founders, we're typically going to commit to about 60 days a month, about 520, I can't remember off the top of my head, about 520, 530 days over the 9 month period. And that kind of backs up back to the first question, is we're not expecting anybody necessarily to have to give up their jobs to do this to start with. They might have to take a bit of time off here and there to support the work that needs to be done. And for that reason, we don't expect a salary to come out of it.
It's typically 2 days a week, what you are saying, like 60 days a month, 2 days a week.
Yeah, 2 days a week, and that's not doing a 9 to 5. That could be 2 hours, in the evenings, at the weekends. It's to achieve kind of like key objectives and deliverables. Okay,
very good, very interesting. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the first cohort in Asia. This is what we did in Q4. So we are going to do a cohort in Asia every quarter. And the first one was in Q2. And I would like to discuss with Luke about that cohort. So Luke, can you tell us a little bit more about what the cohort looked like, what kind of startups we saw in the cohort, how many, how did it work? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like Pedro said, we ran our first cohort right before Christmas last year. We had over 150 people sign up at the beginning, and actually a roughly similar number on webinar one, around 60 to 70 last time. So we're well in line to achieve the same results. Over the period of 5 to 6 weeks, we ran these webinars each time and obviously upped what we were asking from each founder in terms of traction and validation. And we also met with all of them individually to give them some coaching and some mentoring and to get to know them as well as we progress through towards the selection days. We are, myself, Joe and Pedro are available from now until the end in order to give bespoke advice. Any general advice we try to fit into these webinars so that you guys all have a level playing ground. Last cohort, we ended up with 18 for our demo day. So from 70 to 80 down to the 18, which we ran over 3 days, and we had various different panelists join, give advice and also score each of those businesses. We scored them against founder, traction, the problem, the market, and what insight did they bring to the table. And we ended up picking 6 that we felt were exceptional to move forward with in some capacity or another. It's quite a low percentage, but a lot of the founders who are here again today were invited back because we did see something within their business proposal, or we saw something within the founder, but they didn't have the same level of traction or validation as the people ultimately that we decided to move forward on last time. From my perspective, it was a really good cohort. We saw a huge variety of businesses, from B2C businesses to logistics type businesses to sustainability, and lots of the key tenets of obviously what is becoming a passionate space in Asia in regards to tech startups. So we were very happy with it. We're hoping to have a similar demo day of around 18 sort of finalists towards the end of this cohort, and we'll probably pick around 6 again to move forward with as we move through the cohort, although that's not a fixed number. If everyone on this call is amazing, then we'll do our best to work with as many people as we can.
And Luke, what are the key strengths and the key weaknesses of the startups that you have seen in cohort 1 in Asia? What are the aspects in which they are really, really, really good, and what are the aspects in which they are a little bit lacking?
Yeah, I think the best startups that we saw, they had clear validation. You know, they knew exactly what the problem was, and they could point to real customers who they'd spoken to and would reference that problem. So it wasn't us taking their word, it was them with their customers ready to test the product, that we could gain confidence that what they were saying is true. They were also extremely coachable. So we've seen people almost completely change their proposition from week 1 to week 5. And they were still able to gain traction. Like Alistair said, you know, they knew what their strengths were, but they were also keen to explain to us where they needed help. If we don't think we can add significant value to your venture, then we won't select you to move forward with. If you've got it all figured out, there's no reason to work with a venture builder like us. So being as honest and transparent about strengths and weaknesses is really, really helpful. In terms of focus as well, some companies, they focus very well on an initial niche that we feel like we can, fully take advantage of and grow really quickly, because not many other people are focused so specifically. Few of the other companies that were a bit weaker were actually trying to do too much. You know, they're trying to be all things to all people, when actually we want a very specific customer base in the beginning that we can develop a product for, and we're very confident they'll use it and go forward with. In terms of other weak aspects, you know, the pitch itself is really important. Now, it doesn't have to be, massively inspirational. You don't have to stand up and deliver it like a TechCrunch presentation, but it needs to be clear. We had too many pitches before demo day that we had to turn away because they just weren't clear enough. You know, they were overcomplicating what they're saying, and they weren't going through a set structure of explaining who the problem is, who it affects, what we think the solution could be, and what the market would say to that, and what obviously we could achieve together if we worked through. So a lot of good ideas probably didn't get heard as well as they could because people didn't practice pitching enough. And that's a really key part as well. And if anyone's not confident at pitching or needs help structuring that work, again, myself, Joe, and Pedro will be available during this whole program so that your idea at least gets heard and evaluated properly.
Okay, very good. Excellent. Actually, we are going to have a webinar about pitching, about how to prepare the pitching of ideas. Let's talk about this a little bit more. What are the webinars that we have apart from this one, and how does it fit into the application process?
Sure. So webinar 2 will be around gaining traction in users. So being able to identify, target, and talk to your users and add them to your user panel is critical. We won't invest in anyone who doesn't have a user panel ready to test whatever we build. It's just, you might as well get that before you turn the clock on in terms of investment. So that's a really critical session, and anyone who can't bring that panel won't get to the end. So being able to start speaking to your users from today is probably the best piece of advice we can give. You'll have already been through the Lean Stack program, so you'll have got an idea of where your risks are on your canvas. So by the time you hit webinar 3, you'll have hopefully spoken to many users, you'll have tried to recruit them, and you'll be bringing the insights that they've said into your pitch. And that's where we'll give you the overall tips for constructing that pitch for demo day to make sure that you're explaining it as well as you can. Post that, we'll be inviting everyone to a practice pitch workshop where members of our team, some of them on the call today, will take a room each, and we'll invite a number of you into that room. We'll pitch into an open, transparent space, and everyone can give feedback. That's also where we'll be evaluating who we want to invite to the demo day, because we do have limited spaces. That session is more of a workshop, and you can bring your pitch as it is and gain a lot of advice. We'll then give you a bit of time before the demo day in between those 2 sessions where we'll invite you, let you know that you have a spot, and then there's a bit of time to really polish the pitch, increase your traction, and to really articulate where the risks are and where the opportunities are. The final week, around 2-week break.
2 weeks break, which are around Chinese New Year.
Yes. And then after Chinese New Year, we'll have the demo day in which you'll get scored by our panelists against those different metrics. We'll be able to give you advice, hopefully invite some of you to join us in the program. And those that we think have potential but aren't quite ready, we'll invite you to the next quarter's cohort, which will be beginning quite soon after the end of this one. So if you don't make it this time, there's plenty of opportunity to come again. Like Paul mentioned, we don't see failure as a bad thing. We see it as saving us all time and money until we find the right plan that we can execute on.
So this works on a rolling basis, right? So if you're not ready for this cohort, you automatically get invited to the next one, right?
Yeah.
And these webinars are every Wednesday, correct?
Correct.
Except
other than the break.
The demo days, and the demo days, we will tell you which day that will be exactly. There are 3 days that we have reserved. One is Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So we are doing it in 3 sessions. All the other webinars, apart from the demo days, are always on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Singapore and Malaysia time, and 7 p.m. in Jakarta, correct?
Correct.
Very good. Wonderful. And then, so I understand that now the question that some people might have is, what is the role of the Lean Stack onboarding process in the application? How does it play? How is that evaluated? Why is that important?
Yeah, so Lean Stack, as we mentioned earlier, really is the textbook on how we're going to do things. So from your perspective, you should do that and take in the lessons, because if you don't believe in that way of building startups, then you should probably, you can remove yourself from this process. It's very important to us that we all are aligned in the way we want to build these companies. So number one, it makes sure that we're aligned in what we're going to do after this. Secondly, the things that you produce, your lean canvas and your traction roadmap, will help us mentor you much more effectively. If when we meet, we can review that canvas in advance and go over it together, you're going to have a much more productive session with us in helping you build your startup and identify what you need to do next. And finally, those pieces actually are part of your investment submission. So when we look at this with the panel, we look at this at demo day, we will look at the lean canvas, we will look at the traction roadmap, and we'll use that to weigh up, how much has this person thought about this startup? How much effort have they put into really understanding the key components of their business? And from our perspective, some of the best founders last year had an idea that they were quite solid on, did the lean stack process, and through the techniques that they learned, they were able to shift their proposition and gain a lot more traction a lot faster than had they in months previous to doing it. So for us, it's absolutely critical that people have onboarded, have done the lessons, have finished the canvas at least, and then if you're still not sure on what to do next, that's when you should reach out to us and we can quickly identify where you need to work on next.
Okay, very good. Wonderful. And well, you were talking about that a little bit before. What differentiates a good application from an overage application?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. Level of detail. Some canvases are very, very broad, and it takes a lot of bravery to say, this is what I'm actually going to focus on, and I'm going to leave this other stuff for later. So level of detail is paramount. The most important thing is that there's detail in the problem and the customer segment canvases. Everything else we can work through, but if you haven't got a clear idea of who you're targeting and what problem you're solving, all of the rest of the canvas is kind of, it's neither here nor there. So the best applications really focus in on those two boxes. They focus in on who their early adopters are and what they're doing today to solve the problem. Really poor applications are just either they're completely full, there's too much in them because they're scared of leaving anything out, or they're too vague, they're too broad. They say things like a social media app for this generation. Like that gives us nothing. But if you can add that detail in, and whenever you're not sure, you really should talk to us because we can probably help you shortcut some of those things.
So what we are going to do for these one-on-one conversations is the following thing. So everyone who submits the video, there is a video pitch that has to be submitted in the application. We're going to contact them, and we're going to arrange a half an hour call with me, Luke, Joe, probably several of us. We are going to start, we have arranged some of them already, but we are going to start mainly after this webinar. Right. So once your application is complete, and that involves having the video, which is the last part, the link canvas, and the traction roadmap, these three things. Once you have these three things, then we will talk. Before that, no, we will not be able to talk to you. You need to submit a complete. Another question that a lot of people ask is about the deadline. Deadlines don't really matter that much because it works on a rolling basis. However, for people to be considered on the practice workshop, that if you are not in the practice workshop, you're not going to be in the demo day. You have to be in the practice workshop. In order to be considered for that, you need to have a complete application by, so the practice workshop is going to be on February 3rd. In order to be considered for that, you need to have a complete application by the Friday before that, which is going to be the 29th of January. So if your application is complete by that date, then we will consider you for presentation. This practice workshop, and that is also for presentation. In order to be invited for these demo days, obviously, well, you are here because you have been invited. In order to be invited for the demo days, as long as you have submitted the initial form where you have to answer a few questions, as long as you have filled this form by the webinar, you're going to get an email getting invited for that. But in order to be presenting in the practice workshop, we need the complete application, including the three things: canvas, link canvas, traction roadmap, and a video pitch. Okay. So those are, and if you are not ready before that date, if you're not ready before the end of January, that's not a problem. You might be ready at the end of February, and then we will invite you for the next one, which is going to be in quarter 2. So that's not going to be a problem. So it works on a rolling. I think what we are going to do now is we're going to go over the questions that we have here. There are many questions. So let's try to answer all these questions. Maybe some of them we have already answered. So let me read the questions that we have, and we try to answer all of them. Okay. Number one here, I suppose it is quite normal that founders are not full-time until in their business because they need to keep their bills paid, as well as fund the startup. May I know if it is acceptable with Nova? And if yes, have there been some examples in the past? And if not, does Nova expect, what does Nova expect in terms of founders' contribution? Yeah, it's no problem to be part-time. As we said before, typically you're gonna have to work 2 days a week. It can be the weekend, it can be the evenings, no problem. Okay, so that is clear. If I go to the next one, what percentage of applications are successful? What are you looking for? Well, actually it's around 2%. If I take year 2019, because maybe 2020 was a little bit weird, but if I take 2019, Nova invested in 27 ideas, and there were 1,700 leads. That was mainly UK in that. Okay. Next question will be, one second. Earlier, Alistair mentioned about giving up control. As founders, we cannot be knowledgeable in every area, and we don't need to listen to experts in other domains. But what do we have? But do we have the final say, and do we truly still own the company, or are we becoming hard to the Alistair?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one there, isn't it? And maybe the way I explained it didn't come across right. So, and it's probably worth kind of stating that we call the business model a co-foundry. We're co-founding businesses with founders. We're not controlling, we're not owning, we're not the people that say, in so much that the founders aren't necessarily the people that are owning and controlling and saying. When you go back to, if you forget that we exist and this business model exists, if you had 3 people come together and you split the company equally, you'd all be required to come to an agreed point on each decision that you were making, so that you benefited from each one of those individual parties and their knowledge and their experience, and the fact that it's good to kind of discuss objections and debate and all that kind of stuff. That would happen in a normal startup. It's very rare that you would have one individual person and what they say goes. And generally, as we've kind of explained throughout this, that's usually the reason startups fail, unless you ace it for some reason in some kind of like real special secret sauce that you know that nobody else knows. So moving back to the question, we don't control any more than the founder does. It is a true co-founded company. We just happen to industrialize it, but treat it in the same way and think of it the same way as if you're co-founding a company with 3 of your best mates. You would expect them to kind of challenge you, and in the way that Luke said, if something does come forward that you don't necessarily agree with, but the market is telling you that, we will try and push that angle. You know, we will always follow what the market is telling us rather than what our heart or our gut is telling us. It's generally always market led. So hopefully that gives a little bit more of explanation around that question.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think it clarifies quite a lot. The next question from Shishir. May I know, out of the 300 that applied, how many got funding and what was the average capital? We are having serious conversations with 3. It will be 2 or 3 at this moment in this cohort. That doesn't mean that, as the cohort 1, that doesn't mean that some of those people that applied are not going to get invested in cohort 2 or 3 or 4. Maybe somebody applied in cohort 1 and finally is ready for an investment in a later cohort, right? Luke, can you tell us a little bit more about the Overage capital?
Yeah, well, as Alistair said earlier, you know, the 2 to 3 that we're looking at from a Nova perspective, we'll be looking to deploy £300,000 worth of cash plus services into those companies, as is standard for any of our 9-month companies.
Okay, and how much equity? This is the, I think this is a question that comes a few times. How much equity does Nova take when co-founding?
Yeah, so for an idea stage company with the founder working part-time, typically we'll go 50-50 with that person. The Nova team gain a percentage, investors that we've raised cash from gaining a percentage, and the founder retaining 50% for their idea and their hard effort. There are some levers that can change that, but typically it's, have you got a product that can show that we've de-risked? Have you got some revenue that shows that people are willing to purchase this? Or do you have connections with other funders who at a later date will help us raise more cash, and that would significantly de-risk the proposition for us? So there's a standard deal, and there are certain things that certain companies can demonstrate that would allow us to lower that amount, but only if those certain conditions are demonstrated.
Okay, perfect. The next question is from Cesny. Cesny is asking, what if the founder of the company then gets clients or customers before the end of the 9 months? And then who controls the revenue profit that comes into the company?
So we'd expect all of our companies typically to have some clients and customers by the end of 9 months. Otherwise, we've probably done a very poor job in that goal. In terms of revenue and profit, you know, there are no dividends to Nova. We're not interested in taking 50% of profits that come through. Those profits should be reinvested into the company to help it grow. Now, whether that means bringing the founder on full time or whatever else the company needs to do, it is for the company to decide how that is spent. And as Alistair pointed out, that's for all of the shareholders and co-founders to come together to best determine how that money should be spent. But we're not looking to claim any of it back. You know, we are looking for an equity exit, and that's it.
Okay, very clear. And that capital structure will change in successive rounds, and there will be new shareholders, and these new shareholders will also have opinions, and they will participate in the decision-making process, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. The next question is, I have not completed my MVP, as I wish to start building my first MVP with Nova. Is that possible in the Nova model? And it's absolutely possible.
Yeah, 80% of the companies we invest in, we build their MVP for them, with them. So, yeah.
Wonderful. If my project was not selected after I have completed my application, pitch, canvas, roadmap, will I be notified on that? Will I be able to join the next cohort?
So everyone here who continues to attend the webinars will be invited to the practice pitch workshop, where you can gain much better feedback and more value around that idea. You'll be notified if you're not selected for demo day, and you will be invited back to the next cohort if you wish to refine your proposition. So everyone who's completed the pitch canvas and roadmap and traction roadmap are very welcome to join all of our sessions. They're welcome to join the practice pitch workshop. It's only at that point will you be we'll tell you if you've not been selected for demo day.
Okay, excellent. Next question is, could you provide a rough timeline from how long it takes to start the investment process to completion if accepted?
Roughly 2 months, if everything goes well.
Okay, so basically, and how does it work? So if you are selected for investment, how does it work? They get a proposal. What are the steps?
Yeah, you get a proposal and our documents. You meet some more of the Nova team. You have a chance to review those documents and come back with any questions. We structured the deal, and as soon as we have a team ready to go, you get put in a list, and when that team's ready, we'll deploy it onto your business, and we'll be transparent with when that will be.
Okay, excellent. Another question here about the investment amount: £300,000. How much of that is cash, and how much of that is services?
Yeah, so typically it's £260,000 service with £40,000 of cash to help you do the things you need to do during those 9 months, and then typically we'll try to raise around £500,000, of which the split can be much more variable.
Okay. Eugene is asking, hi all, just a quick question. If we didn't receive a response, does that mean that we aren't selected?
If you're on the webinar now, you're in the cohort. You're invited to continue and keep attending and meet with us and hopefully pitch on our demo day.
Mm-hmm. Now, Charles, question to Paul. Paul has left, but we will try to answer the question. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you see climate emergency and sustainability on the problem scale?
I'll pick Paul's up in his absence then. Well, it's like, it's high, isn't it? As a problem the world is facing now, it's probably one of, if not the biggest, if you remove COVID. In relation to what we've been speaking today, it's probably like, it's just too broad. I mean, somebody came to us before and said, I want to solve the counterfeit drug problem. It's just too broad. But in terms of a problem the world is facing, it's massive. There's the follow-up question there, which I can see, which is part 2, and will Nova be focusing on SUSTECH? There's 2 answers to that. Short answer is I'm certain we will at some point. The longer answer is we're sector agnostic. So if somebody comes to us with a problem where they think they know like a potential inkling of the solution in that sphere, we are all ears. I mean, in terms of the finance side, we're going to be signing up to PRI, which is UN supported network of investors which sign up to 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we are never going to invest in anything that is counter in the ESG world. And if somebody comes to us with something which is cracking, then we'll back it. In the future, we may do specific SUSTECH cohorts, but it's nothing we've got planned.
Okay, excellent. Let me go to the next question. Adrian is asking, in the event of a disagreement in the company about the company direction, a 50-50 co-ownership, co-founding, share proportion will likely result in standstill since neither party has a majority share ownership. Will Nova take less of 50% if the founder is able to contribute some capital as well? I think there are 2 questions here. Number 1 is, do you solve the problem by taking 49-51? And the other question is, under what circumstances will Nova take an ownership stake that is lower than 50?
So
there are these 2 parts.
I mean, yeah, Luke can come in as well if he wants, but the co-foundry take doesn't end up with 50%. As I said before, it dilutes down. So the co-foundry is not on 50%, the founder is on 50%. There's no, by the end of the first deal, there's no one entity other than the co-founder on 50%. But you know, the other parties can come together and create a 50%. But like to get, it's challenging, isn't it? It's kind of like enter a startup thinking about what's going to happen if we go down a disagreement. It's probably the mindset's maybe slightly wrong there. But yeah, Nova, the co-founder, don't have 50%.
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, you know, we wouldn't start this company without founders who understand the market. So as long as what the founder's asking for, we can validate with users and customers, there's very little reason for us to disagree. In the sense of a true disagreement, typically we'll back the founder to do what they need to do, but we'll set out what metrics we want to see in return for that trust. And it needs to be a fair discussion about what happens. And kind of as Pedro alluded to, even if you guys own 51 and the rest of the partners own 49, does that sound like a company that will succeed if 49% of the shareholders are being dragged along against their will, and vice versa? So it's in all of our interest to come to a common understanding and set real targets and goals, and allow the founder to do what it needs to do. but also, there's a reason that you guys are interested in co-founding with us. It's to prevent the same mistakes that startups are constantly making, and we'll do our best to try and guide you in that approach. Very specifically, would we be interested in taking capital from a founder to adjust that shareholding? I mean, Alistair can correct me if I'm wrong, but my gut reaction is no. It's already a very difficult thing that we're about to do and embark on together. It's a very risky proposition. To add in your own finance into that mix only clouds and dilutes things and only increases the risk on you to get it right, which actually is where a lot of the problems come from. So we'd rather, if possible, just be able to focus on the problem, not get the waters muddied with people putting their own cash in, at least until a later date.
Yeah, and just like to kind of back that all up, less so kind of the money and cash and equity thing. This just like as soon as you understand the lean startup methodology, this doesn't become an issue. As if somebody has an assumption or gut fear or something which becomes a bit of a like, well, there's a bit of conflict here. That the whole thing with the lean startup is that you're setting up mini experiments to disprove hypothesis. So that we never say we know the right way to do it. We'll set up an experiment which is to go to the market. The market will tell us the right way to do it. And we follow that, and that's through this whole lean methodology, which is why the venture readiness course that everybody will go on at the start is so vital, because it gets you in that mindset.
Okay, excellent. Makes a lot of sense. Because actually, I mean, if you are two co-founders, and even if one of them has 51 and the other one has 49, that's not necessarily going to help. And right, I mean, it's both of them have to agree. And as you were saying, it's not agreeing on opinions; it's agreeing on things that have been verified through the lean startup methodology by doing experiments on the market.
Yeah.
Right. Very good. Let's go to the next question. Stephen is asking, you mentioned that you are very tech focused, but my business is a high-end fashion brand. I covered this before proceeding further with Nova, and I was told that you still be interested in looking at my business. Is this the case? Yep. So, Alistair, Luke,
yeah,
or Joe?
I guess everything that we do has got to be tech-led. That's the core of it. I don't know the specific one, so I can't comment. Maybe there's a tech angle within it.
Maybe there is an e-commerce angle.
I don't know. Maybe there is. So that may be why we said. But for everybody else that's listening to this, it's got to be tech-led, and there are very few businesses out there at the minute, other than pure product-based or retail kind of location-based businesses that aren't able to have some kind of tech angle applied to it. But I don't know. Luke maybe knows more about that specific one.
Yeah, drop us an email afterwards, Stephen. I'm not aware of that business, but if there's an element of e-commerce or being able to rapidly grow it by leveraging some form of technology, then we are interested. If it's purely the creation of high-end fashion, then we're probably not. So drop me a note and we'll see.
Yeah. By the way,
where that one's up
how
to.
do you contact us? Right? What is the email where you have to contact us? You can write to, I mean, if you are in Asia, most people in this call are in Asia, you can write to asia@wearenova.co.uk. Otherwise, you can reply the emails that you are getting. I think you are getting the emails from my email address. If you reply to that, you get me. That comes directly into me. And otherwise, what we are going to do here is in the chat, I guess, Joe, if you can type the emails of the different people that were here, you can just contact us in those emails. We're going to put them in the chat. Okay. Let's go to the next question. Rose is asking, in the long term, if Nova made an exit, is there any case that Nova will return to a company? So what do you do if there is an exit? What do you do with the money of that exit? I think that's kind of the question.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the question is asking, but if we exit, there would have been a large liquidity event, probably some large round or some kind of M&A activity, in which case the company is moving onwards and upwards, and going back to Paul's analogy, like leaving the port And we're aligned with you to get you to that point, to get you to where you've got a successful and scaled company, and we profit when we exit. So that's not to say that, again, like, I'm not entirely sure of the question. That's not to say that we wouldn't maybe continue to follow some of our money, but generally an exit is you are exiting out, and you wouldn't go back after you come out.
Okay, good. Let me take the next one. What is the process to apply for the program? I explained that briefly. There is a post on the Nova blog. If you go to the blog of Nova, you are going to find a post that explains very much in detail how to apply for the Asia cohort. Maybe we can post the URL of that post here in the chat comments. Or otherwise, you just go to the blog and you will find it. It's one of the latest posts in the blog. But let me just explain. We have a form, which I think Paul has just posted it. We have a form. You send an application to that form. We are asking, it's an initial application. We're asking for a few questions. We're asking very basic things. What is the problem you are trying to solve? How do you think you're going to solve the problem? How are you using technology for that? How does your experience contribute to solving that problem? And things like that. And your contact number, your email, things like that. It's very brief. Once you do that, you're going to get an email from us that is going to say, okay, thank you very much. Now go to our onboarding page, our Ling Stack onboarding page, where we are going to ask you to do some exercises. There are a lot of videos in that program that you can watch, and it explains the Lean Startup methodology. But you will have to produce 3 things. Number 1, a Lean canvas. Number 2, a traction roadmap. Number 3, a pitch video. When you have all that, then you are ready. Then you are ready to participate in the demo day. You are ready to participate in the preparation workshop that we have before the demo days, and it's selected there in the demo. That's how it works. Next question. Hello, how quickly does Nova expect to be able to assess traction? You mentioned with Centric that it took 1 year. Is that the usual kind of time? I think this varies quite a lot. Correct, Alistair?
Yeah, it does. But all companies that get invested in by Nova will have that user panel, so it will already have some initial traction, so that we know there are real customers waiting to test whatever MVP is built. From there, it's a constant assessment of traction. You know, like, what is a startup without growth? Many companies take different paths, but you're constantly looking at who are you talking to, what's their level of engagement, can we get more?
Okay. There is a question here that says, hello, how quickly do Nova expect? I think that's the same question that I answered before, but it is incomplete. Go to the next one. Chesney is asking, what if the solution is building? What if the solution is part of a bigger vision for the company? You are building, how do we prioritize which phase of the solution do we prioritize? For example, when Amazon started building, they only sold books. Now they are selling cloud. So if you had a bigger vision, what do we start with and how do we? Yeah, there were several applicants like that in the previous cohort, right? That have a very grand vision, a broader vision. And the question is, do I start with something tangible and I don't talk so much about my broader vision, or I try to sell my bigger vision? How does it work, really?
Well, yeah, I personally love it when someone can identify a real small segment of the market that has a true problem that we can just focus on and make sure that the product is working before we scale to a bigger vision. I mean, obviously, without knowing your business, Chesney, it's hard to say whether that's too niche and you'd have to expand a little bit on how you'd grow bigger, or whether or not actually that's a perfectly fine place to begin for many years. You know, for the example for Amazon, you know, if you had a very successful business that only sold books, but you did it across the world, that would be an extremely valuable company. You might not need to explain how you're going to go sell cloud later. If you're selling an extremely niche product, so you're only looking at people between age 20 and 21 in Singapore, then you might have to explain how that will grow later once we validated this market. My overall advice would be to focus on what you're going to actually do now, and only use the end pieces of your presentation to talk about broader vision, because we're not there yet. In question of how do we select which one to go for first of all, we'd be looking at you as the founder to give us some indication as to why, which one you think and why. But typically it's who has the biggest problem, which part of the market is desperate for a solution, because it's much easier to sell an unproven solution to those people than it is to sell to the broader market who maybe already have a few solutions. They're just not aware that yours is going to be better. So who's got the biggest problem? Can it be targeted down to one specific user group? And only if that appears too niche would I waste any time talking about a bigger, broader vision.
Okay, very good. One question here, is it better to build the technology yourself, or is it better to out?
Yeah, I think it's too broad a question to fully answer. Everyone's in a different scenario. Everyone's got different resources available to them. If you have the capability to build it yourself, then why not? If you don't, then you don't have many other choices really, other than finding a technical co-founder or outsourcing the tech. So often it's being pragmatic. What can you actually do within the time frame that you want to do it? Outsourcing tech gets a lot of bad reputation, but if you have the right partner, then many people have made a success out of it. So there's no definite answer to that question.
Perfect. Okay. Excellent. Let me go with the next question. I'm answering some of them that are very specific directly. I'm typing the answer to the question. Let me ask this question. Are you like any of the other startup accelerators or incubators, like Entrepreneur First, 500 Startups, YC, or totally different? I think this is a very, very good question. What are the difference between an accelerator, an incubator, and Nova?
You want me to part answer that, and yeah, raise the eyebrows from Luke. It's interesting, isn't it? So there are some in there that would call themselves accelerators, some in there that would call themselves non-really incubators. There are some in there that would call themselves venture builders, and it's very difficult to talk about all of them because it would take a lot of time. They're probably kind of like two groups though within that list. There's one group which is going to take somebody which has traction, is probably showing like great growth, early growth signs, and what they're looking for really is access to capital. Like Y Combinators, to some extent, you put them in that category. That they're going to take somebody which they've touched on something which is like got great potential. They want to now learn how to speak to investors, how to raise cash, and get access to a potential like network of past founders which are going to open doors for them. That type of thing, we're not that. We are earlier than that generally. So then you move to the other group, which might fit into like really early accelerators, maybe, but more kind of venture builder. And the way that a lot of the others out there that work, and you could kind of put Antler and Entrepreneur First into those, is very, and this is a massive generalist thing, is generally what happens is that there are certain problems which are posed by one of those companies to a group of individuals which could be classed as entrepreneurs, and they ask this group of people to try and solve problems. They can bring their own problems, but basically what they do is they try and team people up within a bit of a program. So you end up with small cohorts of individuals which are going to solve either pose problems or their own problems. They then go through a very similar approach to, say, Y Combinator, which you go through demo days. You get trained in how to speak to investors, to raise cash in a single setting, and then you get the backing and mentorship to kind of like go off and use that cash. But it's a concentrated light touch approach, similar to what we'll probably be doing if we could do this face to face, if COVID wasn't around and we were in Asia and we had a month-long program like we're about to run. It would be that with a demo day at the end, and then you're off. What Nova do is we employ 100 people to be co-founders. Nobody else does this. We co-found businesses with people, and we support you throughout the entire journey, whether it's 9 months or like medtech is maybe like the extreme. We've got companies which we've been with for 3 years. We're still providing a team to them. We're still providing cash. We're still backing them. They haven't left the nest yet. And then we've got others which will leave like within 9 months or potentially earlier sometimes. The real difference for us is that we co-found businesses with our like mothership of employees, which are the types of individuals which you would want in your startup. So it's a really big and difficult question to answer, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of an oversight of how we're different. We provide it all under one roof, if you want to think of it that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I think it's clear. I think there is not a standard terminology, but in general, incubators do accommodation only.
Yeah, so yeah, the standard is incubators, accommodation, accelerators.
Accelerators do, yeah.
Their set period of education with the idea that you get investment at the end of it, and then you're off.
Yeah, so they do some accommodation, some business network, some mentorship, and then they give you access to finance. They introduce you to finance. And Nova basically does product ownership, engineering, marketing, access to finance, mentorship, business network, and accommodation. The two things that Nova doesn't do is the problem, understanding the problem, that has to be the co-founder, and customer discovery, that has to be the co-founder. Okay, let me go to the next one. Will Nova also rope in external subject matter experts of the selected startup tech company, or the selected startup tech company?
Yeah, that's part of what we do. So we call them, I think, I forgot what the terminology is now, but growth mentors or something like that. Is that right, Luke? Growth mentors, who are, there's two sides to think about business, isn't there? That there's subject matter experts or like business experts, and we can parachute those people into the startups as and when they're required.
I think there are two kinds of experts that can help a startup. I think experts on the methodology of building a startup, like Ling startup experts, are very helpful in the early stages, and then business or functional experts are helpful at later stages.
Yeah, and we like at the slightly later stage ones, that everybody that pops out at the end of 9 months is when those people really start coming into play. And it might be somebody which is kind of an expert because they've exited a medtech business or something, and they know how to get contracts with hospitals. It might be that niche, or it could be more generalist. But yeah, whether it's business focused in how to exit or position your company for exit within a certain sector, or whether it's sector specific in knowing why somebody might buy something within your certain sector, or even kind of like closer niche than that, then we have access to these people and we'll put them in as and when is needed.
Okay. There are a few questions here. There are specific questions about particular case, but let me try to generalize. Some people are asking questions about how will it work for me if I am in this stage, in this particular stage in my company. So some people are saying, I already have a commercial product. Can I go with Nova? Some people are saying, I already have an MVP, or I already have done the market product fit, or the market, or I already have an MVP version 2 with traction. Do I still fit in? So the question is, what are the stages in which Nova can work with startups, and it's a very early stage in general? And what are the stages in which we will say, well, actually, you need another kind of investment?
So the closer you are to product market fit, the less value you're going to get from Nova, is the truth. And if you think you're ready to scale with your own team, then our investments always come with part of our team working on that tech side. So if you don't think you need that because you're a well-validated MVP and you can raise money at a significant valuation, then yeah, you're probably not right for us. But having an MVP out doesn't necessarily mean you've hit the right stages. Like, is that MVP service in the market? Are you gaining the right level of traction? Or are you still very flexible in how you need to get to product market fit? So if your mindset is that I still need help in order to fine tune this and grow it and get to product market fit, then we'll talk to you. If you're thinking soon I need to hire my own team, I need to scale out, I've already got a commercial product and I can't wait 9 months, that is our model. Like Alistair said, we're not a typical VC. We might be able to answer some questions, and we do have some partners who look at fundraising, but specifically for Nova, you're probably not quite right. If you've got an MVP and you want to chat to us about how it's performing and maybe how we could help, then I suggest you try and book us in for an individual conversation, because all companies are different.
Okay, good. Another question here. What if we are already full-time in the startup? Does the equity split remain the same? What happens if there are multiple co-founders and they are already full-time?
So, what has that full-time work resulted in? Have you built and de-risked a product? Have you gained revenue? Or do you have links to other fundraisers? If all it is that you're working full-time on it, then that's actually more risky in many ways, because now the very early stage company has to support constant salaries for people, rather than being able to turn a team on and off like we can provide. So if that work has resulted in things that de-risk the company, then we can talk about a bespoke deal. If the mere fact that you are working on it full time is something that we actually want to avoid, is people who would love to work on their own company for a year and see how it goes and would love to get paid to do it. We're not interested in funding a lifestyle like that. So only if that work has resulted in true value points that we can look at would it change the deal.
Okay, very good. By the way, some people are asking us, will these videos be made available? Yes, they're going to be on YouTube. They're going to be public on YouTube. So they're going to be on the Nova YouTube channel. And you are going to get an email after this webinar in a few days that is going to say this is the link to the video. Well, let me see. Some of the questions here are particular issues. Let me see if I find a question that is general enough to be discussed in public. Will you consider safe notes? So safe is a particular kind of investment approach. Will you consider safe notes?
He's got his finger on his button.
Yeah, it's not. So we've worked with some convertible notes before. I don't believe we've ever worked with a safe note, just because there's no guarantee to our investors that it will ever convert. And they're investing in a super early stage business with the hopes that will have a significant value uplift within a reasonable time frame. So I don't think we've ever worked with safe note. We have worked with convertible notes under special circumstances, if there's the right opportunity.
Luke, maybe you can explain what is a safe note briefly, so that everybody understands.
So it's similar to a convertible note, which means that we agree that if a certain valuation is hit or a certain milestone is hit in the future, then some equity will be converted back to the founder, for instance. And if it's not hit, it'll remain with the investors. It's kind of a prove us wrong scenario. That usually has a deadline on it. So within a year, if it's not been achieved, then the equity is not converted. A safe note, if I'm correct, doesn't have a timeline on it, which would appear to be friendlier for founders. But for our model, we simply can't allow just equity to be floating for an unspecified amount of time before it's done. If you search safe note investing or YC, for instance, who I think are big people who created them, you'll get a lot more information.
Okay. There are some questions here about the geographical scope of Nova. Let me try to generalize. So some people are asking, would you be interested in other regions that are not UK or Asia? For example, there is one person here, he says, I am living in Singapore, but my idea is for Latin America. Other people are asking, since you are a UK, originally from the UK, is it possible for the startups that are from Asia to expand in Europe or the UK? Yeah, some questions about, does geography matter?
So, short answer is no. Long answer is it depends. In that, yes, like what we're really looking for is a global problem. To have like a niche problem within a set geography, which is not the UK, that's probably going to be a bit too much of a risk for us. It would also potentially go against some of the investment criteria that we've got to hit within the investments due to the regulatory kind of wrapper that we invest through. So generally, if you go to venture capital, they're going to look for a problem which is worth addressing in a market which is global and scalable, and therefore it doesn't really matter who the first market is that you're serving, whether it is Singapore or whether it is somewhere in Latin America. That's not too much of an issue, and in fact we are looking at like expanding globally, so it could be a good marker for us as to where potential next markets might be. And as for helping people expand it into the UK, it kind of falls into the same thing. We want to expand globally, and the UK would obviously be the easiest kind of next market for us to approach.
Okay, very good. Well, so we have been talking to all these many founders that are interested in Nova for almost 2 hours. There are 11 questions here, but they are particular cases. I think all the generic questions that might apply to everyone are already answered. If you have a question like what happens with my application, I submitted my application and I want to know the status, etc. What about my particular industry or my particular idea? You can write to us. In the chat section of this of Zoom, you see the email addresses. So here you have 3 email addresses, my email address, Luke's, and Joe. You can write, and it is possible to arrange conversations, so that should not be a problem. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Alistair and Joe and Luke. If you have any other question, please let us know. I hope to see most of you next week. Next week, we are going to talk about how to get traction, how to get customers, how to do consumer research in order to start learning what customers want before you build your MVP, rather than building an MVP without knowing what customers want. And we have other webinars that are coming in this cohort. I think it can be very, very useful. So I hope to see you all. And yeah, any question, any problem, just write an email to us. Okay. And I think we are done. So I think people in the UK are going to go for lunch. And then people here, at least myself in Asia, I'm probably going to have some dinner. So thank you very much, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See you.